what's up? Sanisa, Super Bad Estrada here, and I just want to give a huge special shout out to the relay. Thank you so much for all of the continuous support, and thank you for all of the support during and after and before every single fight.
Welcome to the motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. Well, the women's IBF minimum weight champion, Yokasta Valle of Costa Rica, was in action this past weekend against Venezuela's own Deborah Rengifo, and Yokasta managed to win a points decision.
The IBF title wasn't on the line.
Thus, it was not a IBF title defense of the IBF's minimum weight title. Post-fight, the reigning champion stated that she wants to come to America and she wants to unify with none other than Senicia Estrada.
And if that sentiment is earnest,
If that statement rings true, then the fight shouldn't be hard to make, should be easy to do.
if Yokasta is earnest,
If she's serious, if she means business, as it's Senicia Estrada's mission to capture world titles in both the minimum weight and light flyweight divisions. Very recently, she was in action in the light flyweight division against that division's WBO champion, then champion, Tenkai Tsunami.
excellent fight.
Senicia won a points decision that she really had to work for, and I'll say comparatively, I don't think Yokasta Valle can give Senicia the same resistance that Tenkai Tsunami did.
I think that's an easier fight for Senicia.
But anecdotes aside, there's no reason that the fight shouldn't happen. And I reiterate, if Yokasta Valle is serious, if this expressed interest is an earnest one, then the fight should be easy to make because Senicia Estrada,
she's got a major promoter behind her.
and she wants to unify. This fight won't be riddled with the problems that smaller outfits, smaller promoters face when trying to orchestrate a card.
Burden won't be on Yokasta Valle's promoter.
That burden will be placed at the feet of Golden Boy Promotions, who I'm sure can finance the fight, foot the bill, and make the fight happen.
All Yokasta's got to do is show up.
If I'm being honest, I don't yet know how serious Yokasta Valle is and how serious Yokasta Valle isn't, because not that long ago, Senicia Estrada was in the market for an opponent. And the rumor was she approached several champions around minimum weight and light flyweight. I wonder if Yokasta Valle wasn't one of them, and I wonder
If she was
approached, why didn't she take the fight then? If she was approached, why did she end up fighting Deborah Rengifo in what wasn't even a title defense? You know, what happened and what has sparked this change of heart? In any event, I'm not against the fight. I hope it happens, and I hope that Yokasta Valle is serious.
because people say a lot of things.
And Senicia Estrada aside, there are two other champions there for Yokasta Valle to unify with, and who's to say that she doesn't change her mind, she decides to fight one of them instead.
The original plan was to do a rematch with Tina Ruprecht.
I haven't forgotten about that. Tina Ruprecht, who was very recently in action in defense of her WBC minimum weight title.
Who says that fight don't get revisited?
I'm just giving it to you straight because it's the only way I know how to give it to you. I'm not against Valle versus Estrada. I hope it happens, but there is a chance that it doesn't. There is a chance that, maybe Valle decides to reshift her focus, redirect that energy. We'll see what happens. In other news, fresh off his big win over Jazza Dickens for what was the vacant IBF featherweight title, Kid Galahad has just signed a multi-fight promotional deal with Matchroom. We plan to get Kid out in a voluntary defense in November and then move straight into unifications, said Eddie Hearn. If the WBA moves Lee Wood into super champion, then that's a big all-British fight. And we also love the Emmanuel Navarette matchup. I've oftentimes been accused of being too partial to Matchroom, being too partial to Eddie Hearn. And maybe stuff like this is why. He just secured himself another world champion for the Matchroom stable, and
You see it.
obviously he's going to do some in-house stuff with the guy, but he's not ruling out possibilities with other champions that fight under other banners. I've often been accused of shilling for Matchroom and shilling for Eddie Hearn, and maybe it might seem that way to some folks that see me lambast and criticize the PBC in the same video where I praise Matchroom, but this is why. And when Eddie Hearn says this stuff, I know he means business because he's actually done it before. Lest we forget, the unification match between Mighty Mo Hooker and Jose Ramirez, the attempts they made to orchestrate a Demetrius Andrade versus Jermall Charlo fight, the attempts they made to orchestrate a fight between the then IBF super featherweight champion Tevin Farmer and Gervonta Davis.
The guy ain't just talking because he's got a mouth.
I'm confident when I hear Eddie Hearn say this kind of stuff, he actually means business. They're open to a unification match between their champion, IBF champion Kid Galahad, and Emmanuel Navarette.
But I'm being biased.
If I praise Matchroom for attempting to orchestrate the kind of fights that the featherweight division needs, I'm accused of being partial. Well, let me tell you something.
The PBC's had 2 world champions at this weight for years.
And they have yet to make a fight between them. If they do now, the fight's lost all its momentum anyway. I mean, who cares about inactive Gary Russell and lukewarm Leo?
At this point, they're both cold product.
The PBC has had 2 active reigning world champions in this division for the longest time, and they've yet to make a fight between them. And what you want me to do is turn a blind eye to this. You want me to ignore.
You don't want me to talk about it.
And you don't want me praising Matchroom for attempting to orchestrate the kind of fights in the featherweight division that the PBC hasn't made yet. The kind of fights they could have made long fucking time ago. You don't want me praising Matchroom for doing what the PBC is not doing, because if I do, I'm a shill, and I'm biased.
You just can't see the forest for the trees, buddy.
He just won that IBF world title, and they just signed Kid Galahad, and they're already talking about unification fights, unification matches with other world champions, not exclusive to the Matchroom stable. And that's what the featherweight division sorely needs, because it's a division that has stood divided for years. When's the last time you saw a unified featherweight champion?
As far as those fights,
The Lee Wood fight is a very realistic fight. I don't know that the WBA will eventually elevate Lee Wood to full-fledged WBA champion at featherweight. Because Leo Santa Cruz is still in possession of a WBA title there, the full title, and because the WBA does seem to have a habit of giving PBC fighters preferential treatment. So I don't know how realistic that is. The fight between Lee Wood and Kid Galahad could happen, but I'm not sure if it would be a unification match. Comparatively, the Lee Wood fight is a much more winnable fight for Kid Galahad than the Emmanuel Navarette fight. You'll excuse me for saying so, but I don't really see anybody beating El Vaquero at this weight. I don't. There are no other fighters quite as awkward and aggressive and as effective as Emmanuel Navarette is at this weight, the reigning WBO champion. And don't get me wrong, I love the fucking fight. If Eddie wants to make it, then make the fucking fight. I'm all for it. I'm just telling you, if he makes it, I don't like Kid Galahad's chances in it. I don't really like anybody's chances against El Vaquero.
Leo's, Gary's, or Barry's.
I think El Vaquero would beat them all. Realistic propositions for Kid Galahad now that he is officially a Matchroom fighter. They mentioned Lee Wood, they mentioned Emmanuel Navarette, but another realistic proposition for Kid Galahad is a rematch with Josh Warrington. That's right, because if Josh Warrington does make it past Mauricio Lara, where does he go from there? Who does he fight? Either Lee Wood or Kid Galahad. Those are realistic options for Josh Warrington if he manages to avenge the loss to Mauricio Lara in September. Moreover, because of the travel bans and the ongoing situation with the pandemic, that fight could be in jeopardy. Mauricio Lara is currently in Mexico, and Mexico, they're on the banned list.
If the fight with Josh and Mauricio gets canceled,
And let's hope that it doesn't, but if by some chance it does, I could see Josh Warrington having a rematch with Kid Galahad at a later date, or, maybe Josh goes in there with Lee Wood.
I could see that happening.
As some fights are a bit more realistic than others, and a tad bit easier to make as well. The bottom line is, Matchroom has got themselves another champion in Kid Galahad, and for now, the world is his oyster.
Yeah, he's got a lot of options.
In other news, this was sent to me via Twitter, and, apparently, Adrian Broner is once again broadcasting his own issues, his own dirty laundry, his latest tiff with none other than Al Haymon. In a text message that reads, Al, on some real shit, I know what I'm going through, but at this point, you handling me like I hit licks for you. Send me 1,000, 1,500 a day. If I want to spend $1 million, I should be able to because I made it. I know what I owe, and I told you to pay it and get me some more fights so I can make more money. You got me ready to get 100, 200 pounds of weed, bruh, on God. I will never say fuck you, but stop playing games with my motherfucking money. Give me all my money.
There's 2 ways to look at this situation.
I often condemn Al Haymon's business practices because they're not conducive towards the growth of the sport. Al Haymon is often accused of being good for the boxers, but not being good for boxing.
And I think that applies here.
It seems that Adrian Broner is not in charge, at least not fully, of his own finances. His own money, which he earned, which he is so requesting be released to him, by Al Haymon. And
The fuck?
you think about Adrian Broner, the kind of stuff he's been associated with the last couple of years, the fact that he's a man-child and a train wreck.
Maybe this is for his own good.
Because, left to his own devices, Adrian Broner would likely blow right through whatever remaining finances he has left and end up on the street.
He just wants to spend that money on bullshit.
You and I both know it. Though frivolous and decadent spending aside, regardless of what Adrian Broner wants to use his own money for,
Regardless of how frivolous it is.
and irresponsible, isn't he within his own rights to do so? Don't get me wrong. Adrian Broner, he is a train wreck, and he is the kind of fighter that needs handling, needs adult protective services or something. But when I see Hugo Centeno, we talked about here on the channel, when he left the PBC over a year ago.
When I see what Hugo says,
AB the Wave God, this is the shit that made me leave. Over a year ago, we talked about the circumstances of Hugo's departure from the island, PBC's Isolation Island. Hugo himself cited inactivity as an issue, that he wanted to fight more often, and he wasn't fighting as often as he would have liked under the PBC banner, so he's going his own way to do his own thing. Here today, he's adding to that. He's adding to the reasons why he decided to leave the PBC. Apparently, Al Haymon doesn't let these guys handle their own finances. On that same thread, a user that goes by the name of St. Nicholas Brand said, LOL, Errol said in an interview, that's how Al distributes payouts. 1,000, 2,000 at a time. It seems like Al's got all these guys on a short leash, that it's not just Adrian Broner that gets an allowance from Al Haymon. I mean, that's the only way you can describe it. $1,000 a week, $2,000 a week. These are supposed to be multi-million-dollar fighters.
he's a grown man.
On one end, you tell yourself that Adrian Broner is unstable, and he has been for years. He actually is the kind of fighter that requires that kind of care, requires handling. On one end, you tell yourself this, but on the other end, what about Hugo Centeno?
Was Al Haymon doing this with him too?
Is he still doing this with other fighters? Is this the real reason that Hugo Centeno and Daniel Jacobs and other fighters like them, is this the real reason that those fighters decided to leave the island?
Well, it could be.
Because what kind of a situation is it to where the prize fighter don't have access to his own prizes, his own spoils of victory or defeat? What kind of a situation is it to where a grown man don't have full access to his own money? He's got to go through his advisor to get it.
Told you, Al Haymon treats those guys like indentured servants.
And I'm not convinced it's for their own benefit. I'm not convinced it's for their own well-being. I'm convinced he's got full access to their money more so than they do because he's probably using it to invest.
in other projects.
To make himself richer, to make himself money. And what is unethical about that is, well, you could lose their money the way you lost all of that Waddle and Reed money, quote-unquote lost all that Waddle and Reed money, I should say. And then what? Where does that leave the fighters? I mean, what kind of a situation is it to where the advisor has more access to his client's money than his client? This isn't exclusive to Broner. That much we know, at least according to Hugo Centeno.
That's a part of the reason that he left.
I've always suspected that it's not all sunshine and rainbows and back-end money. Mythical back-end money we're always hearing about. I've always suspected that it ain't all it's cracked up to be on PBC's Isolation Island. And Adrian Broner, among several others, are a testament to that. Does he look like a happy camper?
He pulls this crap.
On his own guys, at least the ones that ain't got good lawyers, don't know how to read through the fine print. Pulls his crap on these guys.
$1,000 allowance.
Won a $2,000 a week allowance for what's supposed to be a multi-million-dollar prize fighter that's earned multi-millions. There's something very wrong with what's going on here, and it's no less than what I've suspected.
He's fucking jerking those guys.
He's a pimp, and they're his tricks.
They're not their own bosses.
Or any of that crap you see uploaded here on YouTube, Facebook, or Twitter. No. It's a situation to where these guys ain't even got control of their own money. And finally, an update on that ongoing Teofimo Lopez, George Kambosos Jr. Triller situation. Triller's plan to reschedule the Lopez vs. Kambosos Jr. event on October 17th in Sydney, Australia is scrapped due to the IBF ruling that the bout must be held in a location that does not require quarantine. The fight must now take place by October 17th with contracts due. August 24th. That's just in a matter of weeks. Mike Coppinger tweeted, Ryan Kavanaugh tells ESPN he's going to see if we can make it work around the Kambosos schedule. If we can make it work, we will. Said Las Vegas is the likely site. All the details are available in Mike's article. And, I'm sick of mulling over the particulars when it comes to this very basic, very ordinary fight. It's nothing against Teofimo. It's nothing against George. But I reiterate, and I've said this on many occasions, this is not the kind of fight that should take all this time and all this trouble to make. And every time I hear about it, every time I get an update, I just think to myself, wouldn't it have been much more simple to just let Top Rank do the fight?
At the price they wanted to do it.
Because had they done it, it would have been over by now. They wouldn't have rescheduled it from June 5th to June 19th to August to September, now October. It would have been over and done with by now, and Teofimo Lopez would have been all set up to have a bigger fight before the year was out. You gotta understand, Vasyl Lomachenko has already fought, and had Top Rank done this fight, they could have had the rematch
between them
at the end of this year. They could have capped the year off with that. And Teofimo Lopez would have made considerable money as the reigning champion in the rematch. As it stands, the only money he's going to make this year is off of this Triller thing.
So Lomachenko's supposed to fight Richard Comey.
And I like that fight, I do. Though I like a Lopez rematch even better. A rematch that probably would have ended up on pay-per-view, and I'm okay with that. There's enough intrigue that I'd pay to see a second fight.
This has all just been a massive waste of time.
Ryan Kavanaugh says they're going to work around George Kambosos Jr.'s schedule, and they're going to see if they can do the fight. But what if they can't do the fight? What happens then? I mean, I'm pretty sure that Ryan Kavanaugh and the people over there at Triller are experiencing buyer's remorse, and they're nowhere near out of the woods yet. They got till the end of this month to produce signed contracts for this fight.
And then they got to try to sell it.
Try and make some money off of this thing, or at minimum, get their money back. Get the $6 million for it that they put up. And you wonder that defaulting on the fight might not be the cheaper alternative than what they might lose actually staging the fight.
Could be out $3-4 million.
Because it's a tough sell, because it's not a hot ticket, trying to stage this thing might end up losing you more money than defaulting on the fight and letting the fight be Matchroom's problem. Matchroom, which placed the second highest bid at the purse bid all those months ago.
I don't know how this is going to end.
Boxing news being as fluid as it is, I wouldn't rule anything out at this point. It's possible that the fight goes through as planned. It's possible that Triller defaults and lets somebody else handle it. Either way, it seems to me that this has all been a massive waste of time for what is an otherwise very ordinary fight.